Well, while the last few folks are filing in, I'm Carl Savory, and I want to take this opportunity to thank you for attending. I'm not sure what number this is. I think this is our 17th or 18th leadership lecture series that's sponsored by the National Infantry Museum and the Hughston Clinic. For those of you that don't know, a little bit of background, I started this, or the clinic and I started this about 12 or 13 years ago to try, before this building was built, to try to raise awareness in the local community regarding the museum and its mission. And it's been a very successful, I think, and a very interesting lectureship series. We have this once a year, and then we have a symposium once a year now. And I want to thank you for coming, and I particularly want to thank Dr. Neil Thompson for bringing his organizational ethics and behavior class. I reached out to them because I felt that our speaker may have something to say on a number of these, or on some subject matter that's germane to his course. And with that, I'm going to introduce Mark Donald. Mark Donald is my new best friend. I've gotten to know Mark here in the last 24 hours better than I've known him before. We've interfaced a lot on the telephone and on webinar. We did a webinar together. And I thought that he would be a great person to talk to our leadership lecture series, in our leadership lecture series. If you haven't read his book, which most of you probably have not, I've read it twice. I reread it just before he came. And if you wrote a screenplay or a script and used his story, it would probably be rejected as being too improbable. It is an amazing story about an amazing man. I'm going to give you a little bit of his background. Mark joined the Marines when he was 17 out of New Mexico. And he went into Force Recon. For those of you that are not familiar, that's kind of the elite forces in the Marine Corps. During that period of time, after he became qualified in that, he had a calling that his mother encouraged, and he wanted to become a corpsman. And so in order to do that, he had to transfer into the Navy. He did that, and in inimitable fashion, I think his orders got screwed up, and he ended up in the basic, Navy school. And they saw he was a recon Marine. They said, well, he'd probably be good for the SEALs. And so after he went to corpsman school, he became a SEAL, a Navy SEAL, an operator, deployed multiple times. Later on, he became a physician's assistant. During his 25 years in the Navy and the Marine Corps, he became the most highly decorated individual in the Medical Service Corps. He is the recipient of the Navy Cross. He is the recipient of the Silver Star, Bronze Star with B, and Purple Heart. What's interesting, particularly about Mark, is that he suffered from PTSD. And being a special ops guy, a Navy SEAL, and also in the medical profession, you have a tendency to say, I don't need any help. And he did that for a long time, and then he got help, and now he's spending most of his time helping others with the same problem. It's just an incredible book. It's an incredible story. He's an incredible guy. And I'm really pleased to have him here. His topic tonight is the commonality of extraordinary. And I'm going to let him explain what he means. Mark?
Wow, what an introduction. It's almost impossible to live up to that. And I'm not even going to try. So I'm just going to stumble through as best I can. I really do appreciate all of you coming. I move around a lot. I shift around a lot. Hopefully we won't have any mic feedback. If we do, I'll go back to where I am, to my podium, my hold here. I can tell you when Dr. Savory first contacted me about coming out to do a talk here at the National Infantry Museum, a few things ran through my mind. First of all, what an honor. It's an incredible honor. I spent the day going through this museum. I could spend a week here. There's so much to see and so much to do. There's so many prestigious people that have walked these halls and graced this stage and spoke, and there's so much honor out there. I can't even come close to it. The second thing that I thought was, my gosh, see if we can go to that, was what is it that a mid-grade medical officer could possibly offer as far as words of wisdom to this institution of such senior leaders? Right? What is it that I could bring? And the third thing that ran through my mind, and it was the most prominent thing that ran through my mind, is he probably misdialed, or he thinks I'm somebody else that he called, and I'm not going to let this opportunity pass me by. So I immediately said yes, and jumped off the phone, and sure enough, here I am. So whether I can offer something or not, that's how I got here. Now, some of you may have seen this. I actually received this picture from a retired Special Forces colonel who's been both a mentor and a friend of mine. And he sent it to me because he's like, wow, you're going to be coming to speak at that area. I think more to add pressure to me than anything else, to remind me where I was at and what I was about to do. And we can all laugh at this, and we all laugh at it because, we've all had this sense of, the problems that occur with naivete in people's careers. And it doesn't matter if you're a military veteran, if you're a CEO, or if you're a surgeon leading a trauma team. There's always some pitfalls that happen from neophytes. But I'm going to tell you that newbie managers have a lot more to offer than what people think. And a lot of that has to do with something that senior leaders don't have with their vast experience, because they've lost it along the way, or often have lost it. And what they have is that mindful awareness. The bright eyes open, right? The eyes and the ears open, and well, you know the rest. And that's kind of something that's very unique, because in medicine, it's something we strive to attain. We strive hard to obtain these observation skills that allow us to be able to treat our patients. Without them, you're not going to make the right diagnosis. You're not going to treat the right patient with the right medicine. So it's from these eyes that I'm going to talk to you today. The eyes of a conscious witness. Someone who looked at extraordinary people, extraordinary leaders, and extraordinary events, and started to sit down and record those things. I'm going to tell you what I saw, what I experienced, what I wrote, what I listened, what I heard, and what the main pillars were from all of that. Now, it seems like it's going to be a whole lot to swallow. But I hate to disappoint you, it's actually really simple. I call them the 3 C's. 1 is calm. 2 is confidence. And 3 is communication. It may sound extremely simple because it's easy for all of us to understand that. Yet sometimes it's the hardest thing to do, and it eludes a lot of people, especially leaders at times of adversity. Now, this picture of Chesty sums that up. For those of you who can't see it, I don't know who couldn't. I mean, this screen is larger than life. The caption does talk about what one man's coolness faced, how calm he was in the face of being overrun by the enemy. That's amazing. And when we think about that, we all can grasp the importance of being calm when we're dealing with our subordinates and with our seniors and having them watch. But leadership doesn't always mean that you're leading troops. And sometimes the most important person that's watching is ourselves. I'll give you an example on that. A few years back, I had the opportunity to join with some very honorable people to have this fantastic event come together. It was the first ever basketball game that was ever played on the flight deck of an active U.S. Navy aircraft carrier. So you had two phenomenal teams with legendary coaches. You had Williams with the Tar Heels facing Izzo with the Spartans. Incredible history. And they built this deck in 24 hours, this basketball deck, on top of the USS Carl Vinson. A lot of people were there. The president was there, stars were there, everybody was there. But the one thing that mattered the most to me is I met this one gentleman named Chris Sussingham. You don't know about Chris. You've never heard of his name. But let me tell you about his character. Now, Chris was a test pilot, or at least he is when the time I'm talking about it here. He was a very, very good pilot. And a test pilot is something extremely unique. And those of you that have been in the military fully understand what I mean by that. A test pilot has to go out and fly and do all these maneuvers in every environment, in every condition, with these unusual aircraft that all these aeronautical engineers think up just to see if it actually works. And a lot of times it doesn't. Well, on this day that we're talking about, Suss was coming back. Captain Sussingham was coming back from a training mission. The aircraft actually performed perfectly. It was one of the new adaptations to the F-16. He was doing something that he did normally every time. He was coming on in his approach for the landing. He checked his altitude, he checked his speed, he checked his height. Everything was going as it should. His approach was lined up and he lowered the landing gear. Pushed down on the system. Green light came on when the handle went down. All things were go. Coming in at 150 miles an hour, about ready to touch down. The moment when the wheels hit, they automatically retract up. Now you find yourself in a situation where you're sliding down the runway, actually skidding down the runway, because the only thing that's separating him and this aircraft from the tarmac are the sleds, the two covers over the doors that would normally retract back up for aerodynamics when the wheels went back in. Now, when you're skidding down at 150 plus miles an hour on that runway, the plane is going to act like water. It's going to take the path of least resistance, which usually means it's going to probably yaw, probably going to start to tumble, flip. Whatever it does, it's usually going to end up in a fiery explosion. Now, he only had a few seconds to decide what he was going to do, but he remained calm. He assessed his situation and kicked in his afterburners. Now, he was hoping he could get that aircraft up in the sky and get it safely away from everyone else. But it didn't work. It didn't lift it up. He couldn't get flight. Thankfully, the increased speed that he had was strong enough to snap the catch cable that was transversing the tarmac. By snapping it, he prevented that aircraft from flipping. And despite what the tower was telling him, and what he was receiving on the radio transmissions, he did not eject. He did everything he could to keep that aircraft perfectly safe and straight. And the only one that was going to suffer was going to be him. That's the type of character that man is. Now, those of you that are pilots understand the myriad of things that are going on in order to make that happen. And you only have a few seconds to deal with it. Now, I started with Chesty. And I talked to you about Suss. Chesty's dealing with a bunch of people, a bunch of troops. He's completely surrounded. And his first reaction is to keep composure. Suss is dealing with just himself. Everything is going chaotic in a quick period of time. And his first reaction is to remain calm. Now I want you to imagine what I'm going to tell you. And those of you that have served in battle will probably think of a time very similar to what I'm saying, because it happens every single war that a soldier goes to. It doesn't matter if it was back from the Iliad or from Afghanistan. And this time I want you to imagine yourself out with your platoon on a patrol. While you're on patrol, you receive fire from the enemy. Now you're in a firefight. Bullets are being exchanged left and right, and with it casualties, wounded and killed. But thankfully, you're victorious. And as the smoke settles, you send out a team of men to go out and assess the wounded. You send out another team to go out and assess the enemy, gather intel. And when they come upon an enemy soldier, there's one that's not dead. He's not critically wounded, but he does need help. Immediately, your medic goes forward and starts to work on them. Now stop right there and think to yourself, there's a series of things that are going on with these men. Because some of the team, they just want him to die. They want to finish this. He was part of the people that wounded or killed, or may have killed their own buddy. Some of the men, they just want to let nature take its course. Others want to save him. There's a whole myriad of decisions that need to be made and emotions that have been bottled up and contained from the battle so that they could win are now being released. It's a large problem. The answer has to be solved by that leader at that moment, but I can guarantee you the answer is always going to start the same. And it's not going to include losing composure or allowing other people to lose their composure. Being calm, settling, adds strength. That is one of the most prevalent items that I have found. It didn't matter if I was under fire, if others were under fire, if I was watching, if Suss was in an aircraft. I have another friend who's been an astronaut. You must remain calm. Go back one. The next trait that I found that was always repetitive was confidence. I always say this. Confidence is contagious. It is like a virus. It will spread. The only thing more contagious than confidence is fear, is despair. And that will spread out of control if you allow it. Now, I recently got back from Virginia Tech. I was fortunate enough to go talk and see their wrestling team. That was a big excitement for me. I grew up wrestling and boxing. I was never at a level to be a collegiate wrestler, but I have the greatest respect for them. So I really enjoyed my time there. For me, it was even more important because they took 4th last year in the NCAA. 4th. So I was talking with one of their assistant coaches, Mike Zadek, who is also a former Olympian, represented our country for the world. And I said, Mike, you know, the only difference between 1st and 5th is all up here. It's all in your mind. Because at some point, the physical conditioning, the skill level, the training, the natural ability, it all evens out. And the only differentiator between the two is mental. Thankfully, Mike and Tony and the others didn't ask me to get on the mat with everybody because they would have beaten me up. I love the contact sports, but at my age, I'm probably not that good at them. Some would call me middle-aged. 49, maybe they're right. I don't know. I like to think not. Regardless, I still like to exercise. So I find myself getting out and exercising by taking the arthritic bones and these painful joints and going running. Or better yet, going swimming. And although I may be moving at a snail's pace, in my mind, I'm breaking land speed records. In my mind, I think I'm Roger Bannister about ready to break the 4-minute mile. And the reason I bring that up is because Franz Stample was a coach that understood this more than anybody. A lot of people know Franz Stample. But if you do any type of interval training, you're aware of all his techniques. Way ahead of his time. He's coached Olympians, gold medalists, bronze medalists, runners, shot putters, every sport that you can imagine. Eventually was director of athletics for Melbourne University. Major prestigious title. But what people most remember Franz for is that the time that he spent with Roger Bannister. Now, Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, and he should be idolized. He did something that no one else could do at that time. And he was a medical student when he started running and a young physician when he broke the record. And he believed that it was not physical limitations that prevented someone from breaking the 4-minute mile, but mental ones. Everybody else felt that there was no way the human body could break that barrier. And I'm not taking anything away from Roger, but I don't think he would have done it without Franz Stample. Now let's go back a little bit. See, Roger Bannister, if you think, back to the history books, was the #1 runner in the world and expected to take the gold in the 1500s in the 1952 Olympics. Just shy of a mile. And although he did go out there and he did set the record for Britain as far as the speed in the 1500, he took 4th. He didn't medal. It wasn't until he had met Stample in 1953 when fellow teammates Chataway and Brasher introduced him to him, that the 4 of them became a team that made history. 4 of them became a team that made history. Now, what made that happen more than anything else was Franz Stample's belief in them. He not only had great physical stamina training techniques, he trained the psyche as well as the body. He was the very first sports psychologist, and he understood that confidence carries the way. You have to believe in yourself if you're ever going to achieve the next step. Now, I'm probably never going to run a 4-minute mile, but I haven't given up hope. Because I know that the body can achieve what the mind believes. I just haven't got myself to believe it yet. I want to. But I know the power that it has. Jesse had that too. Stay calm. And he had incredible confidence. And that power of confidence, that ability for it to be contagious, is what made it one of the 3 principles for extraordinary people. They don't just believe in themselves, they exude confidence. Confidence will spread. Like I said, like a virus. And its greatest host is the leader. If the leader believes in it, it will happen. Now, this is kind of a funny picture, and I know people are probably thinking, what does a used car salesman have anything to do with the discussion on leadership? Let me tell you. Okay. Actually, this is strange because about 3 or 4 weeks ago, I had to get a new car. My mother, a 4'11" little Mexican woman, very feisty, in her 80s. I don't know why she wants a new car. I haven't got a clue. She's in her 80s. She hates driving. She just hates it, right? But her other car died, and you know, I've been a recon Marine. I've been a Navy SEAL. I've seen a lot of things in life. I've been through a lot of training. There are very, very few things that I fear on this earth. But my mother is definitely one of them. So if she wants a car, she's getting a car. So I started doing my research. And as I was doing my research, because it's been years, I use public transportation. I ride my bike. I walk. I run. I don't really use my car that often. And I'm doing the research on it, and there are 3 points that I'm trying to do. You know, what's the most safe for my mom? And, you know, what's going to be the easiest for her to get in and out of, and comfortable, and all of those things. And I finally got everything together, and I went to go see someone like this. I'm going to stop you right there. I want you all to think back to a time of severe adversity that either you faced or you saw happen, and a leader was able to get past it. Okay, we talked about maintaining calm, and we talked about exuding confidence. Chances are, that leader that you're thinking of, there was very, very little communication. Very little communication. At least at times of adversity. I noticed that. You see, when things happen, people need to focus on what's going on. And people that don't focus on that have a tendency to run their mouth. And those that run their mouth are usually doing it trying to convince people that they know what they're talking about, or that they have some ability that eludes them. As an admiral once said to a bunch of young officers, when you're facing adversity, you need to do these things when you're dealing with your enlisted. You need to be blunt, you need to be brief, and you need to be gone. You speak clear, concise instructions, and you get out of the way and you let them deal with it. They'll carry the fight. So true. See, that other attribute that I found was when facing adversity, it's always clear, very concise communication. Not keeping the airways filled with chatter, because all that does is fill the mind with confusion. It lowers your odds for success and increases the probability of people getting hurt. Now, for me, a time where all this came together, or one of the times all this came together, was on the field in Afghanistan. We're out there on a patrol. I was in one of the lead vehicles with some of the finest men I've ever worked with. This one is important to me because I had almost every service imaginable that was part of our component, to include a couple foreign service. Out of nowhere, we were hit with an ambush. Now, we knew we would probably get hit with an ambush. You know there's a good possibility of ambush when you are deep behind enemy lines. Because when you're deep behind enemy lines, everywhere you go, you're surrounded. While I was there, I saw the initial fire open up and hit the vehicle in front of me. When you see heavy machine gun fire hitting men, you'll never forget it. It will stick with you forever. Now, I believe that most people, when faced in that situation, would have wanted to flee. But not these men. Not the men I was with. And definitely not that day. They knew these 3 C's inside and out. They were warriors. They kept their composure and they fought. From the very first round to the last moment we left that battlefield, 8.5 hours later. But the enemy, they didn't know the 3 C's. They didn't understand them. And because they didn't know them is the reason why I'm here today. See, if they would have only been able to remain calm long enough to get us in a position where we couldn't maneuver, where we couldn't move, all of us would have been killed. But they couldn't. They had no composure. Someone fired early, and the rest of them excitedly jumped in and blatantly fired toward our direction. Every single man remained calm, started doing their procedures as they needed to. Our leader, he remained confident. He remained confident that despite over that 8.5 hours, he was told numerous times, air support is leaving us, we're going without cover for a while. Sir, we're running out of rounds and ammo. I told him, casualties are adding up and I'm losing medical supplies. But he exuded confidence. So did we. The enemy didn't, though. Despite having overwhelming numbers, despite being in their backyard and them just coming out of everywhere like ants, they started to falter. They started to give up. And the next thing that happened is they were chattering like a bunch of people trying to figure out where their pants are. All we heard over airwaves was talk, 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 talk. But all our commander did was keep it short. He didn't add words that didn't need to be there, tying up time and airways. You see, all of this came back to those basics. I wish I had some pearl of wisdom to give you. I wish I had something that I could say, here, this is new. But I don't. All I have is the very basics. But the very basics work. The commonality, no matter what it was, whether it was sports, whether it was combat, whether it was in business, the commonality is very simple. Remain calm. Exude confidence. And speak clear, concise instructions. That's it. Calm, confidence, and communicate. And that's what I have to offer you. Now, I said earlier, it's an honor to be here. And it's an honor to meet so many of you, especially so many who have served, and the senior leaders that are out there. But from this humble, mid-grade officer that served 15 years as a door kicker and 10 years as a medical officer serving them, that's what I saw. Thank you. And at this time, I will unfortunately put myself open to any question that you have, so you may fire for effect.